So welcome everyone. I'd really like to thank the organizers and Dr. Tushar Patil for inviting me to conduct this tumor board. So without much waiting, we'll start off with our case. What I'm going to do is I'm going to present the entire case, and then I'm going to put forth scenarios for tumor board A, B, and C, like Dr. Nilesh did. And you can have a discussion and come up with the plan of treatment for your patient in that particular setting. So this is a 57-year-old lady who presented with postmenopausal vaginal bleeding off and on since last 2 months. She has a known history of diabetes and hypothyroidism. She's presently on Tyronorm, metformin, and sitagliptin. There's no significant family history. Clinically, she's obese with a weight of 86 kilograms with a BMI of 35. Other clinical examination was unremarkable. She underwent an ultrasound, and that showed a polypoidal mass lesion in the endometrium with grade 1 fatty liver. Underwent an endometrial biopsy, which showed grade 2 endometrioid carcinoma. CT scan was done, which was negative for presence of any metastasis. Her blood profile was okay, except for a HbA1c of 7.1. So she underwent an open surgery, which was a total hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy and BPLND. And the histopathology showed a grade 2 endometrioid carcinoma. Tumor size of 3.5 into 3 into 1.5 centimeters, which was confined to the uterus, myometrial invasion of slightly more than 50%, no lymphovascular invasion, no nodes, and the cervix and adnexa were uninvolved. So this was a stage 1B endometrioid carcinoma of the uterus. So she underwent an intravaginal brachytherapy of 21 grain 3 fractions, following which she was on regular follow-up. Due to COVID pandemic, she missed some follow-up for 6 months. She presented about 17 months after her treatment with lower abdominal pain, constipation, and dysuria. CT scan was done, which showed large pelvic nodal masses with compression of the left lower ureter with resultant left hydronephrosis. There were enlarged retroperitoneal nodes as well as some omental nodules. Creatinine was slightly high, but her other blood work was okay. She underwent DJ stenting for the hydronephrosis and biopsy of the pelvic nodes. Histology was confirmed a diagnosis of a recurrent grade 2 endometrioid CA with additional IHC showing a loss of MLH1 and PMS2. The ER and PR expression was also done, which was positive by IHC. There was a germline testing done for Lynch syndrome, which was negative. Again, this patient was counseled regarding various options of treatment. She opted for chemotherapy and received 6 cycles of paclitaxel and carboplatin with good response and tolerance. Thereafter, she was put on tamoxifen. While on tamoxifen, 8 months into treatment, she again presented with back pain, cough, and breathlessness. X-ray revealed a large pleural effusion. Pleural fluid was tapped, again, which was positive for disease. And PET scan showed multiple lesions in the bone, lung nodules, and pleural effusion with nodal disease. Received palliative RT to the L3, L4 region to a dose of 20 gray in 10 fractions, and her pleural fluid was drained completely. Her performance score improved with the supportive care to 1. Now, my questions to the MDT, the tumor board A, for you, this is a similar patient, and you have to decide treatment because patient is extremely poor and can afford treatment only under the government schemes. For tumor board B, this is also a similar patient who has a geriatric age. So she's more than 70 years with a lot of comorbidities and cardiac comorbidity with EF of only 42%. And tumor board C have to decide treatment for an affording patient. No finances is not an issue, and no comorbidities, but patient is living alone and has no help from or no social help. So tumor board A. So what would be the surgery? What would be the first treatment that you would offer this patient? Patient is presented with vaginal bleeding. Biopsy showing grade 2 endometrioid carcinoma. CT scan is negative for presence of any metastasis. So would you prefer open or lap? She is under a government scheme. So whether, for laparoscopy versus open surgery.
Preferred is laparoscopic, provided technically it is feasible. She has a BMI of 35. Robotic won't be possible, means she won't be affording for the robotic. So options remain between the laparoscopic TH TLH, BSO, BPL&D plus I think she has got a more than 50% of myometrial invasion. So this patient I would subject for para-aortic lymph node dissection as well. So if technically feasible, as laparoscopically, but if not technically feasible, to do it as an open surgery.
Okay. Tumor board B.
Our patient is 70-year-old and patient is with comorbidities, obese and BMI of 35. Minimally invasive surgery is the better option, and it will be TH, BSO plus pelvic lymph node dissection, plus you will have to do a routine evaluation of the other areas.
Tumor board C.
I think it is the same option that we would give this patient. Obviously, the BMI has to be seen in this patient. And as tumor board 1 has suggested para-aortic lymph node dissection, yes, we may consider, though there is a bit of a controversy in this. But if not, at least the common iliacs and up to the inferior mesenteric artery can be addressed. If imaging is quite okay, maybe supra-inferior mesenteric artery would be a bit excessive surgical treatment in her, but definitely we can go for it.
Yes.
Okay. Also for the geriatric patients, we can have the total geriatric assessment score
Yes,
and
ma'am.
take an anesthetist opinion and then decide if the risk is low. Yes. Also, I know it is stage 1B and we are planning for surgery. I'm tempted to do a PET CT to see any other sites, but I don't know. May not be much data, but I would definitely do it in this case. If finance, logistics is in place, see if there are no other meds before we plan for
There's going to be
surgery.
a question on that as well in the audience.
Yeah, but
board.
in the third situation, that is the patient is affording but living alone. These patients generally tend to be quite heavy in the sense having high BMI. So definitely, as she said rightly, we have to evaluate this patient medically,
Yes.
especially for the liver function, fatty liver status, and if at all there is some subclinical variceal disease which is there. Because if the evaluation is not proper, then post-operative decompensation of liver disease can be a post-operative problem. Also, some sort of medical problems which may be causing post-operative complications, comorbidities, leading to complications in the post-operative period will be a disaster, especially in her situation where she's alone
Yes.
and no family support.
So you would prefer to do open surgery or laparoscopic
No,
surgery?
definitely a laparoscopic or a robotic surgery, whichever is feasible, because she's affording.
So moving on, she has a stage 1B endometrioid carcinoma of the uterus. So what would be the adjuvant therapy in tumor board A? I guess this is pretty standard, but a comment.
Considering that she is 1B grade 2 and no other high risk factors, vaginal brachytherapy 3 fractions is appropriate treatment.
Tumor board B?
I have to comment according to 70 age or 57?
According to 70 age with comorbidities.
Okay. See, with comorbidity means 70 age and comorbidities and a grade 2 and a stage 1B. These are, if you look at the classification, then if somebody is above 70, external brachytherapy, external radiotherapy along with brachytherapy is a preferred choice above age of 70.
I just wanted to say the same thing, that considering this age group also, if she is, I guess, some 57.
She's, she's 70 for you.
Okay, but
For your
otherwise,
tumor board, yeah.
otherwise also, if in the current scenario, she is 57, I guess.
Yes.
With 2 risk factors also, we should give her an option of EBRT. I know every institute follows a different guidelines. Every guidelines goes in a different way. And such patients do recur very rarely. But when they do, you remember them. So it's always better to give an option. Consider if patient is able to tolerate the treatment and then go ahead. There is nothing like wrong in just going ahead with the brachytherapy, but external beam option should have been on the table.
Tumor board C?
So Our Lady lives alone. Money is not an issue. Even though it's an early stage, I think we are moving towards doing the molecular test, even to decide the risk when we decide adjuvant therapy. So minimum we require is a P53 IHC, Pol E mutations if available, and MSI we have done, even though for this lady we did it when she relapsed. So at this point in time, if I knew she was MSI high, I would strongly, maybe I'll discuss of waiting, even though those trials are still ongoing.
Yes.
This brachytherapy will definitely reduce her risk of local pelvic recurrences. May not make too much of an impact in overall survival. But it's just 21 grain, 3 fraction. Even if she lives alone, I think she can comply with that.
So to take it further from there, how comfortable are you not advising RT to patients who have ultra mutated?
Yes,
Would you still be doing that, or?
Because if you look at those Kaplan-Meier curves, they're like almost like a flat line. So I'm at the moment, even though it'll take ages for the data to come out, but
Yeah.
if you have a pole mutation, definitely the outcomes are very good.
So you would
Even
avoid,
MSI.
you would skip RT?
Yeah, and that
even
too in
this
early
patient?
stage. Yeah, early stage, I think we can.
Even vaginal brachytherapy, if it is pole ultra mutated.
I think so. Yeah, especially for early tumors like this.
Any other comments on that?
But Uma, we are doing the molecular markers when she relapsed, not at stage 1B. We did the markers.
Yes, so that
No,
Yeah.
we didn't do it, but
Yeah.
he made a point
Yeah.
saying that if he would do the molecular markers and act based on that. So I was just asking. Any
Hmm.
other opinion on that? Pole ultra mutated tumors, early stage.
Early
not
stage,
doing
we are
RT.
not doing poll at this point of time. We will not know the data and how to
Hmm.
use it. But like rightly
Agree.
he said, once you relapse, then do the markers, take it forward from there.
So she finished her treatment. She could not come for follow-up. First recurrence was 17 months after her treatment completion, lower abdominal pain, and she had large pelvic nodal masses with omental nodules and enlarged retroperitoneal nodes. Because the create was high, she underwent a DJ stenting for the hydronephrosis and biopsy of the pelvic nodes. Creatinine normalized after that, and the histology was a grade 2. Right now, we did an additional IHC here, which showed MSI high and ERPR was positive. So tumor board, in your setting where patient is under government scheme, what further treatment would you offer?
The same treatment that has been offered to this patient, combination of platinum and paclitaxel for 6 cycles, and then observation versus putting on hormone therapy, that will be a good discussion. But I think standard will be paclitaxel carboplatin in the setting that we are in.
Okay. For tumor board B, where she has comorbidities.
I would also want to do androgen receptor for her, AR, because there's also a role of enzalutamide if it is positive. But again, what?
She's already ERPR positive,
Positive,
and
yeah.
she is MSI high.
Correct.
So
Like, yes, yes, immunotherapy can be an option with MSI high. Yes, immunotherapy can be given above 70, provided we are aware and careful to manage the immune-mediated toxicities. Okay, if logistics is not an issue, yes, immunotherapy can be a choice, maybe single agent, not the chemotherapy. When at relapse, I'm talking about.
first
or
relapse,
chemo,
yes.
At relapse.
For tumor board C,
Add here.
Yes.
Basically, in this kind of situation, I would go with a single agent paclitaxel. And though ejection fraction is low with this patient, we'll go with single agent that is easily tolerable. Immunotherapy should be restricted to second line. First line choice is a controversial thing. And yes, you may use it in some cases, but my choice is that you should give a choice of this thing. Second thing is there are no visceral crises with this patient. So even if you are not choosing chemotherapy, my choice would be chemotherapy, then hormonal therapy. I would use letrozole or everolimus plus minus in that kind of situation.
tumor board C,
Yeah. So what was the grade of the tumor?
Grade 2.
Grade 2. Okay, so now she has metastatic disease, and we all know that the first line therapy should be the best therapy because subsequent lines, the outcomes are not that great. It's good to see that she's MSI high and also ER positive. In my mind, whether I should be convincing her for chemotherapy, but because she lives alone, because the volume of disease is low, it's only in the pelvis and few lymph nodes. I'm not that worried right now. So I'd be discussing mainly a checkpoint inhibitor or endocrine therapy. And 6 to 8 weeks, we would know she's at least stable disease or a response or not. And yeah, because funds are not an issue, the data for a checkpoint inhibitor in MSI high endometrial cancer is pretty decent. And so I'll be offering her that.
So anybody,
But if she had multiple lung, liver, bone mets, and then maybe I would have told her to take along with chemotherapy, or at least 2 or 3 chemotherapy followed by checkpoint inhibitor.
so I'll ask a question to the surgeons. Anybody for doing a secondary cytoreductive surgery for this patient, in a patient who has only abdomen restricted, abdominal and pelvic disease. She has a good response to chemotherapy.
Yes.
From whatever the scan is saying, it doesn't look like a resectable thing per primary. Post chemo, maybe what the findings are on CT, we might consider. But in this case, I would avoid doing a second surgery.
I will definitely assess her for the cytoreductive surgery since disease-free interval is 17 months. The findings given, we are not sure about. So we'll definitely like to re-see her scans, assess her for surgery. If we can get R0, yes. If not, after 6 cycles, after chemotherapy, we would like to reassess her for surgery if it is possible.
I think at every point of time, surgeon should be brought into the picture, whether it is operable or not, from, in between and at the end, till he says absolutely not possible. The endometrial cancer surgery has a big role.
Actually, I would I won't prefer to operate this patient primarily at the point of first recurrence. I would prefer that my medical oncologist is giving some systemic therapy, after which, if the response is good at the end of whatever therapy he or she is offering this patient, if there is complete response, then in presence
yeah.
of complete response, there is
You
no
can take
point
it.
in, there is no point in operating this situation. But
So-
if at all, there is some residual which cannot be removed, and if at all, that is going to help the patient, and obviously the surgery is not very morbid, then in that case, we can see, because we can correlate this with, say, for example, ovarian malignancies, where secondary cytoreduction does not really improve the overall survival that we know. Similarly, if we extrapolate that data here, then the chances of surgically improving the overall survival is out of question, but even disease-free survival after a secondary cytoreductive surgery will be a very selected number of patients will come into this group of patients. That is why I think that primarily, if there is a first recurrence, the patient is referred to me, I offer surgery for this patient is not a good idea.
So if your medical oncologist is giving pembrolizumab, Ashish said he wants to give pembrolizumab in the first line for this MSI high tumor, how comfortable would you be doing a surgery post immunotherapy?
I know it is a bit difficult, but see, but the thing is that I'll have to discuss with the medical oncologist and the patient, because in our situation, say for example, the patient is alone, then doing any aggressive surgery at a point of time where there is no family support, I would be thinking twice at least before offering any surgery to this patient. Because it is very easy to offer the surgery, but post-operative complications have to be considered and discussed with the patient before surgery.
So you will have a MDT?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think, Uma, we can, if the surgeon is okay and the anesthetist clearance, even we do operate up to 80s. Age may not be a limit, provided other
the issue is not
parameters.
operating. Issue is our patient, initially we had done minimal access. Is it possible for relapse and post chemo to offer a minimal? No, we can't offer. I don't think so.
Can't operate
She-
after laparoscopy?
Pardon?
Already, if it is laparoscopy done, we can't go back and do open surgery. I'm saying
But-
provided
but
it is
Is it
operable.
worth it doing a open surgery for 70+ patient with comorbid things, and plus this situation which has been given to us that she is alone?
So we'll move on to the next.
Just a
yeah.
small comment on
Yeah.
this. As in the primary situation, adjuvant treatment is supportive to the surgical treatment. So in this situation, surgery is an adjuvant treatment to the systemic treatment. That is how I would put it, rather than that being the primary treatment in the recurrent situation.
So coming to her second relapse, 8 months into completing therapy while on tamoxifen, she had a recurrence, large pleural effusion. She had multiple bone lesions and multiple lung nodules with nodal disease. So here she received palliative radiotherapy to the L3, L4 region to a dose of about 20 gram. Pleural fluid was drained completely and her PS has improved with supportive care. So at this point in time, what would be the treatment offered? Tumor board A, again, she's under Arogya Yojana. So you have given her paclicarbo and tamoxifen. What else can you offer her in her second recurrence?
So I will be using an anthracycline because this is a government scheme funding. So that will be low cost alternative to the immunotherapy that you probably would want to give an ideal situation. But since we are in resource constrained tumor board A, I'll be choosing a doxorubicin based chemotherapy. I will not use platinum right now because it's only 8 months that we have had exposure to the platinum. So single agent, 6 to 8 cycles till the time we get the best response, and then discontinue and put on the second line hormone therapy on this patient.
So she's 8 months, more than 6 months. You would still not be comfortable
So
using the
that-
platinum.
Yes, because that platinum sensitivity is for the ovarian, that too serious. This is endometrioid and uterine.
Yes.
So I would still want to reserve platinum for later use, provided her performance status is good at the time of third relapse, because I know she is going to relapse and doxorubicin is not going to control it forever. So I will not use at 8 months re-exposure of the platinum.
Any takers for letrozole with everolimus in your?
Yes, ma'am. We can go with letrozole with in this setting of Arogya schemes.
Is everolimus available? That's my question through Arogya schemes.
Palliative package, yeah, ma'am.
They have, all right. For tumor board B with comorbidities and age more than 70.
Just a small comment, the dose for palliative RT which was mentioned was 20 grade 10 fractions.
Yes,
Generally
it-
what is prescribed will be like 30 grade 10 fractions. And in my case, considering she is an elderly 70-year-old with comorbidities, maybe she will be having a limited mobility. We can consolidate the dose in 1 week, like 20 grade 5 fractions. So that will be much more comfortable for her.
So at second relapse, what systemic therapy would you offer?
I would use pembrolizumab. Cost is not a constraint, or I would use, if cost is a constraint, everolimus with letrozole.
You wouldn't offer cytotoxic therapy.
No, first cytotoxic therapy we gave paclitaxel upfront, and then patient relapsed after that. So, and patient has got ejection fraction 42. So I would not use. And patient has got an MSI high. Age is 70. So again, trying cytotoxic therapy at this age will be too much for her.
Dr. Anita, you had a comment?
Basically, regarding the cytotoxic therapy, I have a comment. This more than 6 months, whatever taxane-free interval we see, it is all arbitrary. So there is no like a proven benefit about whatever we get in patients of CA ovary.
Yes.
So, and after 8 months of platinum interval, we are really doubtful using the rechallenging the platinum-based chemotherapy again. Second option of chemotherapy is only like anthracycline-based chemotherapy, and because of the ejection fraction of 42%, we can't use those therapies considering the cardiac condition. So definitely I concur with Dr. Jain, and we can try the pembro with lenvatinib combo.
You would be comfortable using lenvatinib in patient who has cardiac comorbidities?
Yes, I also would like to reassess the patient at this point of time. It's a second relapse. It was 42 that time. Has she deteriorated? How she improved? What is her diabetes and hypertension? Then take a decision at the second relapse. She may be having deteriorating. Then we don't discuss about options, but supportive care at home. But okay, fine. She remains stable with the cardiologist and physician working along with us. Yes, if I'm not given pembro, I will give now, or if I have given before, I will try to put her on some oral tablets at home. But again, everything in consultation with the physician and see her.
Tumor board C?
Yeah, so for us, in later lines, poor performance status, second line, the response rates to any cytotoxic is pretty poor.
Yes.
And so, and I think everolimus plus letrozole is a good option. I mean, even it's not only for the government scheme patients, but for any other patient. Now, this lady has MSI high disease. So of course, a checkpoint inhibitor, when she's still preserved, will probably work better than later on when her performance status is poor, because we know immunotherapy doesn't work like that in those patients. Regarding lenvatinib, I mean, the data what we have is actually in MSI low tumors, but there seems to be some synergism between lenvatinib and pembro.
But even the data for MSI high is pretty good,
Yes,
even in
yes.
the
So,
same study.
Yeah, so there's, we don't really understand how much it will add, but of course, I mean, because after this, I don't think we have any other lines left for her, so it can be considered.
Any other comment from your team board? So moving on. So this is the PORTEC 1 and PORTEC 2 data where we decided to give the intravaginal brachytherapy in the first instance, mainly because there is no overall survival benefit with EBRT and the toxicity was much higher. And so this patient was considered for brachytherapy. And even in NCCN guidelines, we can see that stage 1B grade 2, they do say vaginal brachytherapy is preferred. But yes, if there are certain high risk features, you can consider for EBRT. So coming to the first recurrence, we saw a lot of discussion about immunotherapy in MSI high patients. And so this is based on this data from Keynote 158, which looked at all solid tumors, but mainly there were 49 patients with endometrial carcinoma with excellent overall response rates of 57%, with a median progression-free survival, which was 25.7 months. And there is an ongoing study, which is actually comparing Paclitaxel with pembrolizumab. Again, Paclitaxel is remaining the standard of treatment for recurrent endometrial carcinoma who probably are not eligible or cannot afford pembrolizumab based on this study, where it was non-inferior to a triplet Pacli plus Doxo plus cisplatinum. This was again phase 3 RCT. And the response for hormone treatment in ER/PR positive patients who had of endometrial carcinoma, a small study, but yes, we did see a response rate of 27% with tamoxifen alternating with megestrol and a median PFS of 2.7 months with the overall survival of 14 months. So a few questions. What, like we discussed in the beginning, what additional investigations would you do for staging in a patient who presents with a grade 2 stage 1B endometrial carcinoma? Anything additional you would do? Tumor board A.
If the frozen section, she already has done a CT scan abdomen and pelvis. If the
She has not done. So she has come only with the biopsy.
And in a resource constraint setting.
Yes.
In that case, if the center in which we are going to operate has a frozen section facility, then I would go ahead with CT scan abdomen pelvis. But if the frozen section facility is not available, I would prefer to do a MRI pelvis and upper abdominal scanning either with MRI or CT scan.
MRI. You would not offer a PET scan to all these patients?
No, she is resource constrained also, and I think it is uterus confined disease. So I just want to look at the lymph nodes and the depth of my material invasion.
Yeah, so there is no evidence to suggest you should do additional investigations in a patient who has a grade 2 or a low grade endometrial carcinoma, which is confined to the uterus, unless there is a strong suspicion of a metastasis. So we've already discussed this LAP versus open TH plus BSO, and that is probably because we know that the laparoscopic surgeries are better. 2 trials have looked at it, the LAP2 and the LACE study. And obviously, although the outcomes were better, the post-op recovery was much faster with laparoscopic surgery. So yeah, we've also discussed this about the adjuvant treatment, only brachy versus EBRT. Treatment at first recurrence, that's also we have discussed. So this is a little bit about cytoreductive surgery for patients. That this was a meta-analysis which was presented in the gynecological oncology, and they said that the goal of surgery should be no measurable residual disease, and you can offer complete cyto reduction. It is associated with superior overall survival outcome. So this is one of the treatment options even in the NCCN for recurrent disease, which is confined to the pelvis and the abdomen. One can consider debulking surgery after preoperative chemotherapy if there is a good response. So this is a question for tumor board B. If this patient had a recurrence which was limited to pelvic lymph nodes, so this is not an intra-abdominal disease, she's only got pelvic lymph nodes, what treatment would you offer?
For a geriatric patient, you are saying?
For a geriatric patient, your patient scenario remains the same.
Okay, but there is no disease anywhere else? It's
No
just a
disease, confined to the pelvic lymph nodes only.
Okay, so if you go through the guidelines, they do recommend if it's only pelvic confined disease, we can consider chemoradiotherapy with a radical intent in that particular setting.
You would give it concurrently or?
See, the literature do recommend to go in a concurrent way, but what I personally do practice is to go ahead with like chemotherapy, and if it gives you some idea of what is the tumor biology, and then go ahead with the RT.
Also, why not think about bringing the surgeon inside, gynae oncologist, only pelvic limited, just take his opinion, do a proper scan, whether we can take it out.
Patient is 70-year-old, ejection fraction 42. We are not trying to cure her. Just give external brachytherapy, external radiotherapy and hormonal treatment. That's good enough to control it.
Tumor board C, similar scenario. Patient can afford everything, lives alone.
Definitely systemic. I would prefer systemic therapy first, followed by, if at all there is any residual, obviously I'll go for lymph node dissection. The reason being, we are facing a situation where it is, though a locoregional recurrence, it is a systemic disease now. Definitely you have to take it as a systemic disease. So there is definitely a role for surgery in this situation, but after some systemic therapy, whichever the medical oncology side will.
No
prefer.
radiotherapy.
Obviously, and radiation, I would, if at all, but surgery, I feel there is a role in this situation for surgery, but not primarily at the time of recurrence, at that immediate first point of time of recurrence.
So you would give neoadjuvant chemo and then go for surgery.
Yeah.
Ashish?
So, I mean, I'm not a surgeon or radiation oncologist, but pelvic radiation has its chronic side effects, the proctitis, cystitis, small bowel related problems, strictures. So I would, and this is ER positive, so let us, an MSI high. So we can probably use options which are more efficacious upfront. Then just
can I
because
have a
we can
comment
do
on-
it, we shouldn't do it. That's what I'm saying.
Sorry?
I'm saying
See-
just because we can do something, we shouldn't do it.
So you would,
See, as far as my practice goes, I have treated a couple of patients in such scenarios, but most of them do tolerate well. And we need to think about toxicities once you are able to control the tumor. So as far as the toxicities with radiotherapy are concerned, they are pretty much in control. 50 gray patient do tolerate. Most of the patient do tolerate. And with IMRT, the toxicities can really go down. So I don't think that toxicity should be the deciding point in this particular case.
so you would go ahead with EBRT. Yeah, tumor board
So-
A.
Tumor board A, so I will prefer going for surgery first because these lymph nodes have not been exposed to radiation. It was only brachytherapy. And they has not been exposed to systemic therapy in the past. So if it would have been an upfront disease also, then we would have gone for surgery. So in the resource constraint setting, I will go for surgery first, followed by C2 adjuvant chemotherapy. Would reserve radiation only if there is extra capsular extension or nodal disease burden is high. That's specifically for the tumor board A type of setting in a resource constraint. Because I want to give more progression-free survival, and without going in for surgery, that is not going to be a possibility.
Okay. So would you consider intraoperative radiotherapy in a surgical setting if you have the facility?
So in a tumor board A setting, I don't have IORT, even that's a category 2B indication for these type of settings.
Okay. So these are various studies which have actually looked at pelvic art, giving external beam RT to patients who have a local or a regional recurrence, mostly after surgical management alone. But yes, patients have received prior RT in a few percent of these patients. And definitely the outcomes were pretty decent with anywhere between 40 to 90% PFS to OS. So it is one of the recommendations even in the NCCN guidelines. If patient has a local recurrence with no RT or brachytherapy, one can consider EBRT or a surgical exploration with IORT, which is still category 3. So coming to question for tumor board C, what treatment would you offer? So suppose this patient is MSI high, but what would you do if this patient was microsatellite stable?
Yes, then in that situation, chemotherapy would be the best first line option.
Tumor board B? I guess.
Single agent chemotherapy, age 70 and 42. Combination would be quite difficult.
Anti-VEGF.
You would add a bell?
Yeah, bevacizumab, any of the gynecological malignancies data in second line. But ejection fraction should not be a problem. Yes, thrombosis can be a problem, but we need to be careful and look for proteinuria, hypertension, aggravation, and thromboembolic phenomena. In this case, and you said that logistics not issue, I would go for bevacizumab. Even single agent also.
She's also ERPR positive. So
Yeah, we have used those already. We are talking now about the
Second
second relapse. Second
no, this
relapse
is
are
first
options.
recurrence. If the tumor was microsatellite stable, this is the first recurrence. It's not the second recurrence. But the scenario is slightly different. The patient has a microsatellite stable tumor.
Yeah, I will go for bevacizumab based.
All
Keep
right.
the oral drugs maybe as maintenance or bevacizumab maintenance.
Tumor board A,
So
I think.
if I'm in A, though, so there is no immunotherapy, but if I was part of the tumor board C, the data for Pembro plus Lenva is for the MSS, not for the MSI. MSI is single agent Pembro.
Yes.
Whenever it is MSS, then Pembro plus Lenva both work.
That's
So if I
again,
was
yeah.
part of 3, then I would offer.
Okay, sorry, but that I think the data is after a platinum-based chemotherapy, so it would be in second line. So this we've already discussed. Yeah, so this is what you're talking about is the Pembro plus lenvatinib data, which is for patients who have been previously already treated post at least first 1 or 2 lines of therapy. And we see that the overall response rates, even in the microsatellite stable tumors, those are to the tune of 34%. And this is another study which looks at Lenva plus Pembro after platinum, Keynote 775, where they have compared Lenva Pembro with Doxo or paclitaxel. And here again, the duration of response was better, even in proficient MMR patients. Median duration of response was 9.2 months versus 5.7 months. Again, PFS OS. I think we're running out of time. So thank you all the panelists for such a great discussion. And I think Dr. Somshekhar has joined us. I didn't see you. Sorry. So I would like to have your expert comments, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was a lovely tumor board, actually. You ran. It was very nice. You donned, the crown of all the 3 people: the gynae, onco, medical, and radiation. The current scenario and the problem with endometrial cancer starts with we surgeons. That general trend by surgical community is, we overtreat the low risk and we undertreat the high risk, which exactly happened in this situation. How do we overtreat? FIGO grade 1, tumor size less than 2 centimeter, myometrial invasion less than 50%, no LVSI. We just think that because I have gone in along with uterus and ovarian tubes, I remove the lymph nodes. So there is a over treatment for a low risk without benefit, but carrying on the complications. How do we undertreat? Typical case. As per the Mayo Clinic criteria and correct GOG protocol, when you protocolize in GOG for any surgical medical trial, there are 4 risk factor endometriosis: a size more than 2 centimeter, more than 50% myometrial invasion, anything above FIGO grade 1, even though grade 3 is important. Grade 2 is a very gray area. Nowadays, if you see most of the cancer center, grade 1, grade 3 easy to report. 2, they are really 1000% sure, because 2 very closely can become 3, which actually is the reason. The moment you have grade 3, they are prone for peritoneal metastasis. Manipulation of uterus during surgery matters a lot. Nodes under evaluation happen. So this is a high risk case where staging was not done. We know 2 things in endometrial CA. Systematic RPLND may not translate into overall survival birth surgery. But there are 2 effects of a proper staging. CA endometrium is purely surgically staged disease. It is not a clinical radiological staging, not a PET CT MR disease. None of them, unlike the cervical cancer or ovary, has come close to the surgical outcome. That's why endometrium is purely surgical stage disease. If we don't stage them adequately, we understage and think it is stage 1. If you present a case as stage 1 like this to medical onco, they would just think of, okay, stage 1, so should I do EBRTR? The minimum standard right staging surgery in endometrial cancer is decide into low and high risk. High risk minimum is systematic pelvic para-aortic. There are 4 papers from India, 2 from my group, from Tata, from many places, and 6 from GOG group and 5 from Mayo. All of them have showed the commonest node involvement in endometrium is para-aortic. Above the IMA and renal vein. Right side, the uterine blood vessel go to vena cava, lymphatic go there. They are most important nodes. Pelvic node can be negative. Nodes below IMA are negative. On the left side, the ovarian and uterine IP ligament goes to left renal vein. The lymphatic go there, they are go. 69% of the time in Indian setup, which we published in JCO and other people corroborated from a lot of group, the node positive is para-aortic. So this patient had more than 2 centimeter, more than 50% myometrial invasion. No para-aortic assessment is done. When there could be 69% node left there. The moment para-aortic was done, node has come positive. What is the stage? Stage 3C. So under treated by the surgical group, Now, if I present it to medical and radiation with stage 3C, this patient would have automatically had an EBRT, vault brachy, and chemo. Now look at the way of the recurrence pattern that has happened in this patient. In spite of 15 nodes, node is positive in the pelvic. Why that hydroretor came? It's a common iliac node, which is not touched. And para-aortic, which means in 11 months, this node didn't become micrometastasis from blood. It is in metastatic there, which has reached a macroscopic metastasis. So the second issue now is the minimum way of assessing lymph node is not systematic lymphadenectomy in ovary. Now it is proved by a lot of trial. You end up removing 20 nodes in pelvis, 20 nodes in para-aortic, 40 nodes, one bisection by pathologist, node negative. They are not true node negative. Now the current standard of care is to do a sentinel node for such a patient. Because when you do a sentinel node trial, the FIRES trial, which is a GOG prospective multinational trial, showed that systematic pelvic para-aortic N0 follow-up at 5 years is inferior than SLNB and N0, which means 16% SLNB assesses positive node. And I pick up only 3 or 4 node, they are stage 3C. So this case very really emphasize under treatment. Para-aortic is missed, so it could be upfront stage 3C node positive para-aortic disease, not presented well to medical and radiation. Number 2, ICG or SLNB is not done. It doesn't matter you do open, lab, robotic, all 3 has a open probe. Open, SLNB probe is there. So now you should do SLNB. That could have been a different scenario. This is number 1. The second issue you covered about open, lab, robotic, all 3 as of now oncologically same. High BMI, robot scores over the lab. GOG lab 2 trial showed it is good. But one of the advantage of minimal access lab robotic is now able to use SLNB and finish the surgery in that short time and yet give a true node positive disease to medical onco. That's number 1. Second thing is workup based. This issue has been addressed by NHS trial very well. Should you do CT, MR? PET, no role for surgeon. No node assessment will be done by PET as of today. The last trial is 72% assessment. So PET didn't add anything. Now, if you are in a setup where there is a gynae oncology setup with frozen is available, CT, MR not required. Remember, it is a surgically staged disease. Frozen, primary tumor, 4 factors. Grade, more than 50%, more than 2, systematic pelvic para-aortic. If you are in a setup in India and worldwide, most of the endometrial C are operated by OBG people. They go with menopause, hyperplasia, then they come. If you look at Tata, your center, our center, Ashish center, 100 endometrium come, 90 are hysterectomy done, endometrial C report, then they come back there. So if you are in a setup where gynae onco setup is not there, oncology frozen, then MRI is the preferred modality to triage. MRI more than 2 centimeter, myometrial invasion, refer to higher center. Low you can do. So MRI now is accepted by NH as the right staging based on where you practice. You brought about an important issue of first recurrence, secondary cytoreduction. If you go through all this trial, all the trial you showed is, I was in some way part of this trial because of a peritoneal surface oncology group EC member. John Pillard's trial which showed we must not confuse a peritoneal disease in this patient. There are 2 recurrence. Node recurrence in common iliac para-aortic because surgeon has not staged. It is not a recurrence. Residual positive nodes left behind manifested. But the true recurrence is a omental disease. You should separate a peritoneal recurrence in endometrial from nodal recurrence. All the role of secondary cytoreduction with or without HIPEC is limited to peritoneal alone recurrence, not combined peritoneal and nodal disease. It's very important. So secondary cytoreduction, as Sumudha told, more than 12 months, and patient has taken adequate systemic therapy before. If it is peritoneal recurrence, there is a very good role of secondary cytoreduction. But you must understand that role of secondary cytoreduction in all the trial, if you go back to that slide, is for non-endometrioid histopathology. 98% of this group has clear cell, uterine papillary serous, FIGO grade 3. So don't confuse these 2, which means secondary cytoreduction should be considered if you have a peritoneal alone recurrence or non-endometrioid histology. Then if you can achieve CC0, these are the group where you must actually look at this point. So I would say that the problem started with first under-evaluated by surgery, not assessing para-aortic, leaving residual node, which was not treated by EBRT because radiation is your friend and he believed you are a fantastic surgeon. When you are given inadequate, it is like, doing a lumpectomy, not touching axilla because my hand had ultrasound and I checked and no nodes. Then you would say stage 1. Stage 3C disease, undertreated. So it recurred, only in momentum, rest is residual manifesting, not coming up. So these are the points which I could say. Otherwise, very nicely, all of them brought it out. But a very nice discussion to understand how rightly to do. You know, we always say that when you have endometrial CS, 75% are cured, 75% are stage 1. You get scared when somebody says a stage 1B. 1 year, truly 1 year. Remember, 1B, they could be stage 3C. So please do a good staging. The whole scenario, what we went through, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would probably never happen. You triage them well, treat high risk adequately, not under treat. Don't over treat low risk. Thank you.